Good evening and Merry Christmas from Connecting Hope. This show, Connecting Hope, presented by Aspire Indiana Health. I'm Will Hampton along with Monica Greer. Merry Christmas, Monica.
Merry Christmas to you.
Tonight, something very different than our normal shows. We are going to focus on this holiday, success stories. And I think it's a great way to celebrate the holidays, isn't
I
it?
do too. Yeah, they are unbelievable and incredible people. So
What we've done is we've picked 4 of the success stories that everyone's heard so far. And tonight's first success story is Daryl Mitchell. Great man, isn't he?
yes, amazing.
So we get started tonight with Daryl's story.
The way that I would describe it is when I drank, I got thirsty. And that's not a normal situation. I mean, if you think about something that you like to drink, you enjoy iced tea, after you have a couple teas, you're good. For an alcoholic, a couple drinks makes you want to have a couple more. I was coming home after being out. My daughter was home from college, and I must have blacked out because I live off of Allisonville Road, and I ran a red light at 116th in Allisonville, and I almost T-boned a police officer. So I don't pull over. I thought I would get home. So now you can imagine the thought process for the officer was now he's fleeing. So he must have called for some additional help. And by the time I pulled up in front of my house, there was other help arriving besides just him. And I looked up and I saw my children in the picture window, and my kids were teenagers at the time. And so I thought, well, I don't want them to see me get arrested. I'm gonna get out and tell them that I'm home. And so as I get out, I don't know I ran the red light. I don't know I was speeding. Don't know I almost hit him. That was met with a lot of enthusiasm because they don't know I'm home, right?
Yeah.
So I remember being on the ground and looking up, and my daughter turned away. I could see she was crying. My son had a look on his face that it just was bewilderment. And I had a thought for the first time that I can recall is, I would do anything for my family. I'd give my life for them, but I can't stop drinking for them. And that was the first time that revelation occurred for me. Because I always thought I could manage it. Had always managed it to some degree, right? Or that I was under the illusion that I was managing it. I remember the first meeting I walked into, and all I could say is, I introduced myself and just said I'm in trouble, and I don't know what to do, And I met some people that said we can show you what you can do. There's a process that you can go through, and if you do these things. Our experience has been that you won't have to pick up a drink or a drug again, for the rest of your life. And at that time, I thought, let's just try to get through the day. But the man, in 12-step programs, their sponsors, the man that sponsors me has been sober now over 50 years.
Wow.
So I think one of the secrets of recovery, there's so many times when somebody's suffering from substance use that you're told what to do. This is a situation where people showed me what to do. And I had experienced enough pain and had seen the harm I had done to relationships and my career and just how I felt as a man, that I was willing to do whatever anybody suggested. The process of recovery and continuing to practice the spiritual principles of the program have led me to look and see things differently. So I don't always do the right thing, but there's a mindfulness now. And and I can hear God's voice differently, that I want to do things that are useful to others. And really that comes from such gratitude for God's grace in my life. I think seconds and inches, I'd be either in prison or dead. And so there's this level of gratitude that I feel like the work, I'm fortunate enough to be paid for it. Now I do a lot of work in recovery that I'm not paid for, but working in this space, I'll never be able to repay, this gift. I mean, I feel like I've won because everything's so peaceful. This is the handiwork of God, because I think about, I just want to help. I just want to volunteer. And, what I discovered is, something that aligned with my passion and some skills and gifts that God's blessed me with. And, my recovery has changed my life in such a significant way that I couldn't imagine, not living like this today.
Thank you, Daryl, for sharing. And again, while we've got him right here, thank you for your sponsorship. Thank you for Aspire Indiana Health for their sponsorship of Connecting Hope. He does a lot of work, and my goodness, does he help a lot of people.
Yeah, and he's always willing to help if you have something last minute or want him to connect with someone that's in or needs to be in recovery or wants to be in recovery. He's just awesome.
Yeah, his story is a lesson to many, and he doesn't mind sharing it, and that's great.
Yeah.
We're just getting started on this edition of Connecting Hope, presented by Aspire Indiana Health. Stay with us. Back on this special edition of Connecting Hope, presented by Aspire Indiana Health, our success story Christmas special. I'm Will Hampton along with Monica Greer, and this next one, we're going to do 4 total tonight. This next one is someone very close to your heart, isn't she?
Yes, Alana. She was a participant under drug court in Hamilton County, and I was her case manager, and it's just such a pleasure to see her grow and her family just be so happy, so proud of her.
That personal connection, it extends beyond the time where you're working with her day to day, right?
Yes.
And how does that continue?
Yeah, we're friends on Facebook, friends. She knows she can call me if she ever needs anything. It's neat to see because a lot of times they say, I can't believe I'm friends with my probation officer. So it's very special.
Success Story Special continues, and here's Lanas Story.
In high school, I was what people call straight edge, where you don't really party, don't hang out with the party crowds. I was very adamant about staying away from that lifestyle. And at one point, my parents picked up and moved us down to Florida. And it was down there that I met a guy. I was 17. I had pink hair. He had a mohawk. It was love at first sight. And turns out he was really heavily smoking marijuana. And that kind of blew the door open for me because it was the first time I tried it. And I had this notion in my head that marijuana was like horrible. I didn't even know kind of what to expect because I'd never been around it. And I thought to myself, oh, this isn't so bad. What else is out there? And that's when drugs and alcohol became the leading force in my life. It became what dictated my decisions, and I didn't do anything without it. So it took over every aspect of who I was and what I did and who I hung out with as well. I stopped hanging out with people that were responsible and goal setters and, moved forward in their life, and I got stuck in a rut where I just hung out with people that wanted to party. And when I got involved with crack cocaine use, that was like the bottom of the barrel for me. It went from just partying and hanging out with stoners to me going to the hood and peddling, like trying to pawn jewelry, and my living situation became it was awful. Depraved, I would call it depravity. It was the pits. I'd sit there absolutely suicidal sometimes at night, hoping to die because I hated what I had become, but not knowing how to cope with life any other way. So I would just drown it with alcohol. Well, when I first started getting in trouble, it was the thought when I'm doing this was, it can't happen to me. There's no way I could get caught. I'm just young and living it up. It's just a lifestyle choice to have fun. Like, I didn't think that there was any consequences to my actions. I didn't think very seriously about it. And when I did start getting in trouble and getting put away, and it became kind of an annoyance at first. And then the very last time when I was threatened with real prison time, that's when it really sank in that this is my life. Then that led into a relationship with Christ. And that's ultimately where this all leads for me, is my dad had sent me a prayer in jail, and I don't know why, but I just started to pray, and it really woke me up. I needed a period where I just dried up from the drugs and the alcohol in order to have some mental clarity, because my head was so fogged up with my own delusion that this was all okay, and that the trouble was just annoying, and reality set in, and whether or not this was how I wanted to live my life. And I hate to say this, but seeing some of the other girls in there that were farther gone than I was at that point really scared me straight. I went to Terra Treatment Center in Franklin and met a lot of women that helped lead me there, and for whatever reason at that point, I just began to listen to what people said and took advice about being honest and recalibrating my brain to focus on what I have to be grateful for rather than my own pity party, pitiful sadness or the delusions, really. I believe that God is who pulled me out from addiction. I believe that, there's no doubt in my mind. And then it wasn't until later in my recovery that I came to salvation and came to know Christ. Because at first it was God, it was just a notion. It was just God, G-O-D. It wasn't very much else. And then later in life, I think it was like 4 years into my recovery, is when I came to know Jesus. I've got chickens, I've got hopefully goats one day, I've got 2 kids. That's, I mean, an unbelievable blessing that came out of all of this. I never even knew I wanted kids until I had them, which is, you know, awesome. And they're a point of accountability for me and a source of, I was just writing about this last night, is that my children are what helped me to be absolutely selfless. We could get sober, but we're not gonna remain sober if we keep bad company around. And that's a huge aspect of it for me, is making sure that I'm surrounded by people that want to do well for themselves, that want to see me do well for myself, and have my children's interests at heart as well, because they're in this too. It's not about me anymore.
Lanas Story just warms my heart. She's just a special person, and I'm glad that she's so courageous to share her story and help us share it with all of you. Next, we're going to have Mark Miller's recovery story.
There was never a day in my life that I ever woke up and said, I hope I don't drink today. My plan was to drink today. My plan was to get the stuff out of the way that I had to get out of the way, and then be able to drink like I wanted to drink. And I didn't want to drink like normal people. I never had a desire to just have 1 or 2 drinks. I wanted to drink like people that were my heroes, people like Ernest Hemingway and Frank Sinatra and Jim Morrison. These were the kind of drinkers I wanted to be like, big, artistic, dramatic people. That's who I envisioned myself as. My wife finally had an issue occur in her life that made it clear to her that she was an alcoholic, and she ended up joining a fellowship of people that were focused on trying to help her quit her drinking. What followed was 5.5 years of sobriety without recovery. And what I ended up finding out is that, you know, I'm not the kind of alcoholic that has a problem with alcohol. When I removed alcohol from my life, my ability to handle things like fear and anger and depression and anxiety, self-pity, you know, all these sort of negative emotions that normal folks don't seem to have a big problem with, I had no way of controlling. And what happened to me was basically a 5.5 year period of sliding deeper and deeper into what some of us who are in the recovery community today refer to as dry drunkenness. In other words, not using the substance that I had a problem with, but not getting better either. In fact, I went in the exact opposite. And I finally hit a point, wrapped around the way I treated my oldest son, where we ended up in a moment which, in my community, we would call hitting bottom. My wife and my kids basically told us we don't want to be around you anymore. We're sick of walking around on pins and needles around you. You make our life miserable. Either you got to figure out what's wrong with you and get it fixed, or you have to leave. I remember driving, I was crying, I was thinking about killing myself, and really at the end, you know, it was in that moment that, you know, I knew what I was. I came here to the Suburban North Club the next day, and a couple of days later was able to admit to the fact that I was an alcoholic. And I've been participating in my own recovery now. It'll be, if I make it, it'll be 5 years in October or November. And I've been participating in a 12-step recovery program and in surrounding myself with people that are wrapped in recovery. And it's been a good experience for me, and it's changed my life immeasurably. The greatest change for me has been the experience of connecting with a power greater than myself, which the work I've done here has helped me to be able to have. I have a connection with what I call God now that has changed everything for me. And what I mean by that is I do my best to live a principled life and to try to live in a way that I think God would want me to live. And that makes my life a whole lot easier than when I was trying to run everything myself.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing your story. We continue here on Connecting Hope, presented by Aspire Indiana Health, with our Success Story Christmas special. And what we saw there with Mark, and many of these people who are in recovery, is that they reconnect and they heal some friendships and some old relationships, don't they?
Yeah, and giving back. He's so involved with Suburban North Club and the recovery meetings. It's just neat and inspirational to all of us.
Well, 3 success stories down. We have another one yet to go, but we've got to take a break. We'll continue with much more here on this Connecting Hope, presented by Aspire Indiana Health Christmas special, right after this short break. Welcome back to Connecting Hope, presented by Aspire Indiana Health. I'm Will Hampton. This is Monica Greer, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas. And our next success story is someone who now works at Aspire Indiana Health.
Yes, peer recovery specialist. We are so glad to have her on board. She's doing a great job.
Well, her story is one where she got into trouble really early, really young, and then now has had a long recovery process that is a highly successful story.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's hear it. Shannon's story.
Well, I first started using drugs when I was 12 years old. It was on the school bus, and a friend of mine had some speed stimulants that she'd gotten from her mom, and I'd never tried anything before. I was in 6th grade, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll try this. And so I tried it, and I immediately liked the feeling that it gave me. And then I just started using, whatever else was available for a period of about four or 5 years. Until I got put in treatment when I was 16 years old. I was smoking weed every day, drinking alcohol as often as possible. My life started getting progressively worse. I stopped caring about things that were important to me, like time with my family, my grades, particularly by the time, like the end of my using time. I remember the second semester of my sophomore year, I had like 11 Fs peppered throughout my whole report card. I wasn't focusing on any learning at all. I felt uncomfortable in my own skin. I just quit caring about things that used to be important to me. And I started getting in trouble by doing some of the things I was doing, and I was lying. And my parents started to become aware something wasn't right. I was supposed to go to a leadership seminar one weekend at Butler University, and I called Butler and lied to them and told them that my grandfather had died and I wasn't going to be able to go. But I told my parents, hey, I'm going. So they took me to Butler. I spent the whole weekend with my friends, partying it up, not having to worry about, going home. But they called to see how I was doing and found out I wasn't there. I was caught. So my parents took me to Fairbanks Hospital in 1986. I listened and I learned a lot. After I left Fairbanks, after having been in treatment there for 7 weeks, I just started putting into action the things they had talked about. I started going to 12-step recovery meetings. I started trying to find new sober friends, but it was definitely challenging because there was not a Hope Academy or a recovery high school. When I got sober, it was go back to the same stomping ground, and they talk about changing people, places, and things, so I focused on that. I've been clean and sober for 33 years. So yeah, when I say that, it's shocking sometimes, but I've just been able to do that. I've accumulated that time by staying clean and sober one day at a time. I don't pick up a drink or a drug no matter what happens. That's been like my mantra. My oldest brother, and this is a part of my story that is important to me to share, he struggled his whole life and he died from an overdose 12 years ago. His name was Sean, and he was amazing, and he had a heart of gold, and everybody loved him. But it was my mom said it was just his demon that he just couldn't overcome, despite how many times he tried. And we went to meetings together and churches and talked a lot. But one time he was alone, and that's the time that he overdosed, and nobody was there to call 911 or throw him in a tub with ice, cold water, or do CPR. So that is a huge part of what motivates me to keep wanting to help people recover. And I love that this series is called Connecting Hope, because that's my thing with anybody I talk to, whether it's through my job or personally, is I always want to offer people hope, because there's always hope for recovery. My mom and I used to say about my brother that as long as he's vertical, there's hope. And we knew that, and I always had hope, so as long as he's alive, he's breathing, there is hope, no matter what's happened in the past. So we clung to that, and that's what I still share with people. I want to let people know that there's hope for recovery.
Thank you, Shannon. I really like Shannon.
Yeah.
She really does good work, doesn't she?
Yeah, and I think, like you said, she's been in long-term recovery, so I think that helps her in her strength to help others too.
We've got to wrap up this edition, and we'll do that right after this break. Welcome back to Connecting Hope, presented by Aspire Indiana Health. Will Hampton with Monica Greer. A lot of great stories tonight, huh?
Yeah, one of my favorite parts, the
Yeah.
recovery stories.
And that's something we do each and every week here on Connecting Hope. Friday nights, TV 40 at 9:30.
Yeah.
Well, Merry Christmas. You have big plans the rest of the time?
No big plans, but you have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yep. Happy 2021.
Yes.
We're almost there, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and Merry Christmas from Connecting Hope.